All right, everyone, welcome into our special edition Florida and Miami preview. We got Cam Underwood, of course. We got to do this the right way. We got Cam Underwood on the line from State of the U. And as we near Saturday, jump over to State of the U, get your breakdown on Miami football in particular. But of course, they'll be looking at those other guys that line up for the Gators and the breakdowns and the matchups that we will highlight here for the next 90 minutes and then also on Wednesday night. Cam, how you doing today?
Feel good. I love coming in here for the special edition, as it were, on a Monday afternoon. But, big games require a little bit extra from everybody. So we have a bunch of stuff going on over at stateoftheu.com. So we have, comprehensive coverage over there. But also, wanted to hop on here and dedicate and focus some time with you in that conversation as well.
And Cam, it's such a huge game on so many different levels. The opener last year against LSU, from a national brand standpoint, a big game, neutral site, prime time, all those things, two huge programs. This one brings that element of, number one, it's all by itself. Sure, Arizona and Hawaii play later that night. But for the serious college football fan, obviously, this stands alone by itself. Number one. Number two, rivalry game. Game number one, week 0. Just a whole lot of different angles to this one. New coach, new quarterback in play for the Canes as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, on so many different levels, like Mark's talking about, and that we're going to talk about here today, and on the website and everywhere else, anybody else who's, talking about this game and evaluating it. There's so many different kinds of points of conversation, just in so many different ways. Yeah, obviously, an in-state rival, a marquee game to begin the season, just like last year, which obviously did not go Miami's way, and hopefully things will go a little differently come Saturday. It sets up future games. Miami opens with Alabama in 2021 in Atlanta and things of that nature. So, obviously new coach, new quarterback. For last year at Florida, it was a new coach, same quarterback, and for them. So a little bit different in that, but a similarity, if you will. There's a lot of points of comparison where, there's so many different things to talk about with these two teams. It's just like, we do big production at State of the U for Florida State Week, because there's all these different kinds of connections and things. You have Naquan Wright, who's a running back. He's a freshman. He just signed at Florida. He talks about, I'm close with Cameron Harris and blah, blah. People are going on and about that. You know why that they're close? Because they played high school football together. Like, they went to Carroll City. Cam Harris, he was named Cam Davis at that time, changed his last name, but he came to Miami. Naquan Wright is a senior for Carroll City last year. He goes to Florida. So, people are like on surface about, this guy knows this other guy. And it was like, yeah, because they had class together. They, shared a locker room. You know what I mean? So there's so many of those layers and things to the onion, as it were. There's lots to talk about, and we'll hopefully hit some of those things.
So, Cam, I'm a geography buff, have been since I was in grade school. So I was the nerd that knew all the capitals and that sort of thing. But for those people that I come across from time to time, and I'm amazed at how many people are geographically challenged. So if you look at the state of Florida and you see Miami, most people can understand Miami's down at the bottom. And Jacksonville's up here in the right corner. Gainesville is more center to Tallahassee being out here on the panhandle. What are the distances in terms of miles and drive distance between Gainesville, Tallahassee, and Miami?
Ooh, those are good. So from Miami, South Florida, if you will, because it's kind of the region necessary, not the city per se. But from South Florida up to Jacksonville, you're talking about 5 hours up I-95 straight up the East Coast. To Gainesville, you're talking 3.5, maybe 4, because you're going to be about a half hour to hour north, or about an hour north of Orlando, which most people from South Florida, we can get there in about 2.5. So between 3.5 and 4 if you're flying. Tallahassee, I've never been there in my natural life, but I hear it's about 7 hours, give or take, depending on which way that you go. I do know that a lot of people will fly up to Jacksonville and then rock over straight west about 3 or 4 hours to get there. So, they're far apart in this state. It's like California, where Los Angeles and San Francisco are many hours apart. Going from Southern California to like Napa area is like an 8 or 9 hour drive. It takes from the bottom. And I say the bottom because I-95, the interstate system where everybody knows, it goes between states. I-95 ends, or all of those highways end in Florida. So I've driven I-75 literally from end to end because that goes up to Michigan. I-95 goes all the way up to the East Coast and things like that. But yeah, I've been to the end, the terminal south end of those things. And it will take a while. It takes about, if you go I-95 to the turnpike, because the turnpike cuts through the middle of the state of Florida on a diagonal going towards Atlanta. So you kind of cut through, instead of going straight east and then coming over and then going north to get to Atlanta, you can take the turnpike kind of through the middle of Nowheresville. It takes about 6 or 7 hours to get from like exit 1 at the bottom of I-95 to the Florida-Georgia state line, just for a comparison. So, yeah, if you live a little bit further north, if you live in Jacksonville, sure, you can get to, other places like that. If you live in other states and you're listening to this or watching this video, then yeah, you can go from, I grew up in Detroit, so I could be 3.5 hours to Chicago or to Toronto, Canada, up the, the highway there. Not so much in South Florida. So we're a ways away, and South Florida is south, and you don't know that until you drive it.
I-95 is crazy long, and I'm familiar with it now that I live in Connecticut. Yeah, runs right through New York City, along the Connecticut coast, way past me, past Boston, up into Maine.
Yeah.
Pretty much spans the country, south to north,
so,
north to south.
Right. It goes all the way to, it ends just a little bit southwest of downtown Miami. I-95 does, and then it goes all the way to Maine. So, yeah.
Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Dive into the videos here, not just Miami and Florida, but also in the next few days, Alabama, Michigan, and USC. Also, Auburn was posted earlier today to get you set for 2019. All right, let's start with the quarterbacks, and let's start on the Miami defensive side in defending Felipe Franks. I don't think this kid quite gets the credit that he deserves based on the development and improvement that he showed me last year and should have showed everybody else. He was a 9-touchdown, 8-interception guy the season before. Dan Mullen's known for his development of quarterbacks. This kid has an NFL skill set. If you look at body type, size, athleticism, and arm strength, arm effectiveness, accuracy, giftedness, throwing the ball versus just sheer arm strength aren't necessarily a match, but he's still working on that. Needs to improve the completion percentage. But your thoughts about Felipe Franks and a Miami front that's still going to be really good, but those two monsters you had in Jackson and Willis, of course, are gone.
Yeah, but Miami is really reloading up front. And I think that that's going to be a key in this game. But looking exactly for or at the quarterback position, yeah, Felipe Franks does have a lot of things that are positive. You know what I mean? I mean, he's 6'6", 240 pounds. He's not like a Cam Newton behemoth at that size, but I mean, he still is, he's tall. He has a strong arm, completed just under or 58% of his passes or right at that mark last year, 189 yards a game. So he's not, really an explosive passer. Didn't showcase that last year. But then again, players develop over the course of time. So he's a fourth-year junior now in his second year with Dan Mullen, who has coached other good quarterbacks before. So, he does have some things that will present problems. Obviously, he does have a strong arm. Ask Tennessee about that with that Hail Mary that he completed against them at the end of that game. So cool, Darnell Green. I see your score prediction. I don't agree, but whatever. So yeah, Felipe Franks does have a strong arm. He likes throwing slants a lot. I saw a lot of people who were watching film from last year. So, he isn't necessarily the most accurate passer, like in intermediate range passing. And we've seen that from Miami also, because, I mean, yeah, we're going to talk about Miami's quarterbacks. And more than anybody, Mark, I've been on here talking about the lack of ability throwing the ball that Malik Rozier had over the course of time. So I'm not one who's just on here bagging on somebody else's quarterback. I was that complimentary of Miami's former quarterback here. So I understand how that works. The other thing that really is going to be a factor, and it has been a factor for a lot of teams, and also with the Manny Diaz defense, or in the past. And I know Manny Diaz isn't calling the defense per se, but it's the same defense that he built and designed, is a running quarterback. And Felipe Franks had the third most carries on Florida's roster last year. And he has that big, gigantic size, again, at 6'6", 240, where you can run some single wing, you can run read option, you can run, just design quarterback draws and run plays. And he's going to be a factor in that kind of a way. And, you saw that in the ACC championship game in 2017 with Kelly Bryant. And I wrote about that, and I came on here and spoke about that. And people didn't say or didn't think that They were going to lean on quarterback run as much as they did, Clemson that being, and they did. If you look back at the game that got Al Golden fired, I know that was a different defense, but still, they had not run the quarterback Clemson that was in 2015. They'd not run the quarterback a lot, and I said, look out for them running the quarterback because it's a thing that we have not accounted for. And then, obviously, you saw 58-0, and quarterbacks, even the backup or third-string quarterback ran for an 80-yard touchdown or something like that. So, yeah. So, Franks does present a dual-threat option for Florida's offense, which can be taxing to Miami's defense. He does have a variety of receivers to throw to. They have big receivers with Van Jefferson, Tyree Cleveland, Trayvon Grimes, he's not from down here, but he transferred here. His family moved down, and he went to St. Thomas Aquinas for a few years and graduated from there. So they have some bigger guys. And then they got fast guys. Josh Hammond, who's from down here. Both him and his brother went to Florida. Kadarius Toney is a slash player who can be running back, slot, outside receiver, kick return, punt return. And maybe they throw the ball to the running backs a little bit. But, Franks can struggle if you get pressure. And that's any quarterback. So if you let him stick around in a clean pocket, then you're playing with fire. Because if you give a player with his physical ability the chance to read the field and really take his time in making a decision, then he can hurt you. Miami will be tasked with playing good coverage with only, I know that there's only 5 cornerbacks on the roster, but there's 12 defensive backs because there's 5 safeties and 2 strikers who are really strikers a hybrid defensive position. Our guy Matt Washington compared the strikers versus the star position for Florida, which is a similar kind of hybrid position. So I know there's only 5 corners, but there's 12 DBs, and you can play coverage underneath with different combinations and things like that. Yet and still, you have to play solid defense all the way around. There could be no blown assignments. And then the defensive line and front seven is going to have to get pressure up the field. So in talking about Felipe Franks, there is development that needs to be seen from his prior performance last year. Obviously, coming out of camp, everybody's in the best shape of their career. Everybody's the smartest. They know the playbook better than they ever have. And that's on both sides of the ball and both teams. But you really need to see that. There are things to like about Felipe Franks. He was a turnover machine the year before last year, like you said. He still had a penchant to give the ball away in some key games last year against Missouri, against Georgia. And who else did they lose to last year? They lost to Kentucky as well. Gave the ball away in that game. All 3 losses. So he's not a perfect player, but he is a talented player. He's a big physical player with the ability to run and a strong arm. So there is a challenge to be presented to the Miami defense. But I think that hopefully Miami schemed up some ways to affect him.
Kentucky and Georgia last year, elite defenses. Georgia, not necessarily statistically, but in regards to talent, one of the top 5 most talented defenses in the nation. Kentucky just had a lights out, great defense last year. Not going to this year, most likely. Missouri, I don't know what happened there, but they got blown out by Missouri. A decent team, but a team that finished 8-5 on the season. When I look at the wide receiver core, this is where I think that maybe Florida can make some hay. I don't consider it an elite group. I'm looking at the Athlon's rankings. They believe that this is the 7th best receiving core in the nation, including the tight end position. The guys that you mentioned, Jefferson, Grimes, Kadarius Toney is kind of a jack of all trades kind of guy. They're really good. They're not elite. These are not elite receivers, Clemson, Alabama, and a few other groups across the country, but they're extremely deep and talented. And because of the Miami issues with the lack of corners, can those safeties step in and cover these guys?
Yeah, I believe that Miami will have a scheme for it. I think that Miami has the talent for it. I don't think that everybody's going to be man-to-man in a bad matchup situation. You know what I mean? You're not going to put Amari Carter on Kadarius Toney and just say, okay, man free, cover 0, everybody blitz. Hopefully you don't get dusted. I don't think that that's going to be smart. So I don't think that they're going to do that. But yeah, I do think that Miami, obviously retooling the secondary, but there's talent there. Al Blaze Jr. looks like he's going to be the starter at the corner opposite Trajan Bandy. You have in the depth chart was just announced, and then Manny Diaz is actually giving a presser right now. I didn't know that was scheduled for this time when we scheduled this, but hey, whatever. But anyway, yeah, so you have Gervin Hall and Amari Carter, your starting safeties. Al Blaze Jr. and Trajan Bandy, your starting corners. DJ Ivey is still going to play in that rotation. Corey Couch is going to play in that rotation. Bubba Bolden should play in that rotation as well. So there are talented guys enough there. And again, you cannot have blown coverages. If Robert Knowles is on the field then I hope that there are no blown coverages, because we've seen that from him before. So that is a concern to me. As a fifth-year senior, hopefully he, like, I talked about Franks developing from where he was in a negative performance kind of a way. I hope that if he sees the field, Robert Knowles also has that kind of development forward, where he's making tackles, where he's in the scheme, where he's not reading things wrong, and the communication between he and the other defensive backs is to the level that lets him do his job function. Because previously we'd seen that there had been communication breakdowns and things of that nature. So obviously I hope that does not happen. But again, putting him or somebody whose coverage skills are not the strongest on, just one-on-one with no help against a wide receiver is probably not the smartest idea. Circling back to what you said earlier, though, about Florida's receiving group being 7th overall, according to Athlon, including the tight ends. The tight ends have done nothing. I mean, there's a little bit of talent there, but Brevin Jordan by himself in his freshman All-American season usurped or doubled the statistics of the whole entire tight end position combined. So, there is a little bit of talent there. It's not much, honestly. Kamori Gamble, fine. Keon Zipper, he's decent, but he's a true freshman. I'm taking both, if not 3 Miami tight ends before I'm taking any Florida tight ends. I think that the safeties and linebackers for Miami should be able to handle those guys. But again, it's not just a one-on-one situation. It's in the scheme of the defense and what they're trying to accomplish and all kinds of things like that. So we will see how those things go. But the one player who really frightens me is Kadarius Toney, because speed. And he has speed and he has wiggle. And it's one thing just to have, elite straight line speed, and you can't wiggle or anything. That was Philip Dorsett when he was here. And I remember he and I got into a Twitter tete-a-tete because I asked that he not be put back to return punts because he had no wiggle. Kadarius Toney has speed and wiggle. And that's something that can affect a defense. Obviously, Miami has players with speed and wiggle as well. I'm not saying that we don't. I'm just saying, in looking at Florida's offense, that's the one who, if he gets in space on a linebacker or a safety and he puts a quick shake on and everything, that's one where I could see it being an issue. So that's where I personally am looking. And obviously, all the people in the secondary need to cover in the back 7. So if you want to take the safeties, strikers, linebackers, and corners, all those guys have to cover. There's positives and negatives. There's things that Florida's going to offer on offense that will stress Miami's defense, but the talent is there. I'm not sure if the production is going to be there or is there yet, because a lot of these guys are in new roles. Amari Carter's never started before. Gervin Hall's never started before. DJ Ivy Al Blades never started or played heavy rotation snaps on defense before. So you're asking a lot from those guys. You're just throwing them into the deep end of the ocean and hoping that they swim. So we'll see.
Speaking of Philip Dorsett, I caught on Twitter today, somebody posted him flying right down by the Gators secondary for a long touchdown pass in the 13 game.
Yeah, and again, when you saw that, there was no wiggle. It was just, I'm a 4, he was like a 10-3, 10-4, 100 guy, like state champion in high school at St. Thomas Aquinas. Look, I'm not going to wiggle. I'm just going to blow right past you. Is what he did. And Miami has some other talented guys who have that kind of ability as well.
People that love football watch it on a regular basis and really understand what wins games. It's protecting the football. It's lack of mistakes. The old adage that more games are lost than are won is certainly true. The offensive lines, I think fans that really focus on their own team's offensive lines probably underestimate how critical that position is across the country in regards to how difficult it is to assemble a truly really good offensive line where you have few concerns. There are few units like that in the country. It's just difficult to get 7 guys together. The 5 that are on the field, 2 typically need to rotate in at some point that are that good against top-level defenses with the kind of speed that the Gators and the Canes have. So both offensive lines sure have concerns, but the concerns are more in light of the tremendous speed and athleticism and ability on the other side's front 7. The Florida offensive line, as we stick with the Gators offense, lost 141 starts from last year. So basically, since Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow left campus, this program is plummeted, except for 1 year in 2012. They were really good, still lost the Sugar Bowl, finished in the top 10 in the country. That's been their one top 10 finish in 11 years. In 10 years, 2009, they finished number 3. Urban Meyer, Tim Tebow, they leave. There you go. The offensive line, the offense in general, what Dan Mullen did down the stretch last year, I looked at so many numbers, Cam, where they were as good or better down the stretch in this past season, yardage, points, that sort of thing. They haven't had those kind of numbers since 2009. And one of the reasons was the offensive line they fixed last year. But I don't know if they fixed it permanently, because they fixed it with a bunch of veterans who left with 141 starts. So this offensive line for Florida, I think Dan Mullen overall has upgraded it, but it may take another step back from what we saw last year.
Right. That's a big question mark for them. The center is the only player who's returning as a starter on the offensive line. I've seen Florida fans talking about Xion Nelson, true freshman, going to start at left tackle, which again was released on today's depth chart. So that's confirmed. And Manny Diaz was directly asked about that as I've been clicking over to Twitter a little bit. So they've been talking about that, but they're going to, Florida's going to start 1, maybe 2 freshmen up front as well, even at tackle. So, losing 141 career starts off of last year's offensive line, that unit explicitly is a big ask, a big thing that they need to fill for Florida. So, getting that all together and everything, you saw the production that was accomplished and achieved by the Florida offense late in the year. 41 points back-to-back against Florida State and Michigan to end the year. And all these kind of metrics and everything. But that was also part with the offensive line doing their job to an elite level. And I'm not sure that that's going to be the case. And just like I was talking about with Miami's secondary, there has not been proof of that for Florida's offensive line. So they need to step into the fire and deal with it as well. Going up against Miami's front 7, because there's going to be pressure. That's what we do. That's that pressure upfield, creating havoc. That's what Manny Diaz's defense does. Literally, we do it better than anybody else, more tackles for loss than anybody else. Havoc rate the last 2 years has been number 1 in America. Miami's defense gets up the field and causes problems. And with an offensive line that has 4 new starters, that could be an issue for Florida's offense. That could be an issue for Felipe Franks trying to throw the ball. But it's going to be one of the key matchups on both sides. Miami's offensive line, which is retooling as well, going up against Florida's front group. I know that they run a 3-4, but you can, and that can create its own problems, because who's coming, who's not, is this end or this linebacker on the outside? Is he coming? Is he not? Things like that. And with Miami, we're just going to get upfield. We got 4 guys and we're going to rotate. We got probably about 9 or 10 guys up on the defensive line group that we're going to rotate through just to keep fresh bodies, and they're going to keep coming. And I don't know if Florida's offensive line is going to be able to handle that. So they They maybe do step up and they have everything figured out, and they come in and they perform just like, the offensive line for the what was that? The Steel Curtain in the 70s and 60s with the Steelers. That line that was just amazing. Or that 90s offensive line with the Cowboys that had all those All-Pros and all those Hall of Famers, and they just step out on Saturday in 5 days' time and they get the job done. Maybe that happens. Maybe it doesn't. And especially in the first game when they have to communicate together, they have to adjust on the fly together, and you're dealing with some big bad dudes on the Miami side of the ball. We had to see what Florida's offensive line is going to do. And I know that Dan Mullen is going to try to scheme to hide some of their deficiencies, which any good offensive coach would do. Dan Enos is going to do the same thing for Miami's offensive line. So don't sit here and say that I'm only, talking up to one side. We're focusing on Florida's offense to start with on this, show. But they still have to deal with, the game as it goes. So there's going to be some good plays. They're going to make some plays. They're going to make some blocks. But I foresee there being some plays where they don't, because Miami always has that happen based upon the scheme, based upon the pressure and the amount of pressure and the variety of pressure, because we have guys coming from different places all the time. You get linebackers blitzing. Manny Diaz is pretty good about bringing in cornerbacks. Michael Jackson, who's moved on towards the NFL now, he was great as a cornerback blitzer. Maybe you bring Al Blaze. Maybe you bring DJ Ivy. Maybe you bring Bubba Bolden off the bench into a slot kind of a role on defense where he does something like that. So, yeah, Florida's offensive line is a major, major, major question mark for me. And obviously they're going to want to run the ball because that's what they're going to do. I think that's how they're going to be successful in this game, is running the ball and then running some play action and affecting the defense, making it move kind of against its will, on a yo-yo string, like, oh, we're coming up to stop this run. And then, there's guys open running, whatever kind of patterns behind the play action. I think that that's going to be key for them. But if they're not able to block up front and get the running game going, I don't think that that's going to be possible. So, it'll be interesting to see. But again, replacing 141 career starts is no small task. And that is what Florida faces with their offensive line.
Chris Taylor, thank you for the contribution. We will get to your question in just a second. Slim Shady Canes, thank you so much for the contribution on the Super Chat, which is open for everyone to contribute to what we do right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We appreciate Cam giving us an extra 90 minutes this week for the big game, Florida and Miami in Orlando. Lo and behold, Cam, can you believe it? We get our first question, at least that I'm selecting is a decent question, from a Florida State fan, Dirty Knoll. Because we're somewhat assuming you didn't, because you disclaimed it right there at the end of your last response, that the Miami defensive line will have an advantage against the Florida offensive line. But the linebackers obviously have to work in concert with the defensive line, and you've got the guys to do that. So maybe the defensive line on certain teams will get the job done, tie up the blockers, create those spaces for the linebackers to be clean and make plays, and maybe they just can't. But you don't need to be concerned with that. You got 4 guys that can get the job done sideline to sideline.
Yeah, absolutely. Shaq Quarterman, Michael Pinckney, Zach McLeod, Romeo Finley, as good a group at the second level on defense that anybody in America has. And I know that all 4 probably will not be on the field at the same time. Obviously, that third linebacker spot comes off for the striker position. And then, Zach McLeod maybe moves into the second team or the rotation in the inside linebacker positions, as it were. But yeah, all 4 of those guys have been around. McLeod, Pinckney, and Quarterman have been starting for 4 years. Romeo Finley came on last year, was the most improved player on the team. Absolute revelation in that hybrid striker role. So yeah, those guys are going to have big games, obviously. And the defense is, built around their abilities as well. I know that the defensive line and the penetrating style is one of the calling cards of a Manny Diaz defense, or now a Blake Baker defense, because he's our new defensive coordinator. But yeah, those secondary or those linebackers at the second level, they're going to have to play to the level that we've seen from them. And all 4 of those guys have made plays to win games. In past years, all 4 of those guys have played heavy snaps so that they know and have experience with the way that things are done. They know the rules of the defense. They know how to counteract different things that they're presented with, route combinations, things of that nature. So yeah, it's a real advantage for Miami to have the talent that they do at the linebacker position in that second level of the defense. And yeah, they'll be going. And those guys, they come forward in run support. They drop back in coverage. They blitz, they spy, they do all kinds of different things. So they are the Swiss Army knife of the defense, just in a general kind of application kind of way. They can do any of the things that the defense needs them to do. And they have, again, so much experience, so much quality talent that they should be able to do it.
So I kind of liken secondary play to offensive line play in this one area that comes to mind, and that's because of the proliferation would be the word of the passing game in recent years. Does anybody have enough guys that can cover really talented athletes, fast guys in space? Because once you get to 4 and 5, and you got to go that deep in regards to covering guys, and of course you scheme against that because of zones, so forth. It's not all man to man, but at the same time, not just talking about Miami, talking about everybody, talking about Florida having to do this. And this is the question served up by Slim Shady Canes in regards to my thought in the Florida secondary is that you're going to look at all the magazines and they're going to say that the Florida secondary is a top 5 secondary in the nation. Athlons has them at number 2 in the country at defensive back. They did have their 2 corners get banged up last year. CJ Henderson's one of the very best in the business. Marco Wilson was out for most of 2018. He got hurt against Kentucky, second or third game of the season. He's supposed to be that good, but he's coming off a major knee injury, and basically he's played well when he's been on the field, but his track record is very slim. Trey Dean's a good nickelback. Yes, Florida may have issues in the same vein as we talked about Miami's secondary having issues once it gets to a spaced out set where with 4 and 5 wide receivers, where Florida has to get enough guys on the field to deal with. And where the advantage may come with Miami is what you pointed out just a few minutes ago, Cam, 3 tight ends and if you've got tight ends with combination speed, size, that's difficult to match up for just about any defense.
Yeah, it is. And I think that obviously Miami's going to run a lot of 12 and 22 sets. So 2 back, 2 tight, 1 back, 2 tight sets with Brevin Jordan and Will Mallory. And then Michael Irvin II rotating in as well. But Jordan and Mallory are 2 of the best tight ends in America. And that's just going to be an issue for Florida to deal with just because of their varied skill sets. And they can line up in so many different places. But yeah, when concerning or thinking about Florida's secondary, and the question is, are they somebody to be worried about? Out of 6 cornerbacks, 3 are true freshmen and 2 are back from major knee injuries last year for Florida. Yeah, I mean, there's still talent there, so respect all opponents, but fear none, Sun Tzu. So yeah, I mean, do you need to be concerned about that? Yes, a little bit. Obviously, just the whole scheme of defense in general, because Jaron Williams will be making his first start of his career. So understanding where to go with the ball, what the object of the offensive scheme and that play call is going to be, down distance, leverage, things of that nature. Yeah, you do need to be concerned or aware, we'll call it, of Florida's defensive backfield and defense in general. Just because, again, they're a very talented team. I'm not going to say that they're not. Bud Elliott from SB Nation, my colleague over there, he says that, Florida's at 53% on the blue chip ratio and Miami's at 51%. So almost comparable, which is why I've been saying for the longest that Miami is as talented as, if not more talented than, every team that they'll be on the field with. I'm not saying they're more talented than. This is the as talented as part. But in Florida secondary, there are blue chip talents at every single position. Those are guys who have skill. Obviously, CJ Henderson from Miami Columbus decided that he was going to, not come to Miami and play defensive back. He went to Florida, and he's darn good. I mean, he's big, he's fast, he has ball skills, all those kind of things. Marco Wilson also following the footsteps of his brother, going up to Gainesville and everything. Saw him down here at American Heritage playing for his father, who was Miami Hurricane back in the 90s. But he was defensive coordinator for American Heritage. That was. So, we'll see how he bounces back from that knee injury, but he definitely has talent. I won't say anything against that. So yeah, you definitely be aware of Florida's secondary, definitely be aware of everybody on their defense, especially in the secondary, but there's some guys up front who, again, when we talk about Miami's offensive line, a couple of their guys on defense can really create some problems for Miami. So yeah, again, I'm not going to say don't throw the ball. I'm not going to say go Georgia Southern and only throw it 8 times and try to run it 94 times a game. I mean, hey, if it works, it works. But no, we're going to go out there. We're going to test them. We're going to, try to find ways to, manipulate the secondary and just, beat them on routes and things. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to go head to head. We're not going to shy away. But, the secondary for Florida is definitely a thing that you need to be aware of just because they do have the talent there and they performed pretty well over the course of years.
Sean Taylor and some others in the live chat had noted Florida's losses on defense. So every team loses substantial productivity from year to year. The churn in college football is year to year. Florida's defense, actually, if you look at the advanced metrics, if you look at the production on the field, even when they were not up to par during Will Muschamp's time, they fielded elite defensive play. Their offense was just so abysmal once Meyer and Tebow left, aside from the 6 games that Will Grier played, and they started off 6-0 that season. And of course, we saw what Will Grier did at West Virginia. Then he got caught for PEDs, and then he was off to Morgantown and throwing 40 touchdown passes a year for the Mountaineers. So unfortunately, that didn't work out for the Gators. Who knows what they would have done the last few years. But the defenses under Muschamp and in the McElwain era were mostly elite, like top 5 to 10 defenses, even playing brutal schedules at times. It was the offense that was abysmal. Now, over the past couple of years, including last year's productivity defensively, was not at that level. It was good. They have really good athletes, but this is not an elite defense. It was not an elite defense last year. It's a good defense. It's a top 25-ish defense, but this is not a Florida Gators defense that we saw from like 06 to 12 or 13. They haven't been there in the advanced metrics, and they lose some of the guys that they had last year. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was mentioned here. That guy was just a ball hawk at safety, made huge plays all over the place, but they were mid-tier, whether you go standard statistics or you go advanced metrics in the SEC, 5th, 7th, 6th. Good defense. Of course, it's probably the best defensive league in America, top to bottom, but not Alabama, not Clemson, not Miami defensively over the past few seasons, and that should probably continue this season. They got so much better because the offense went from, listen to these numbers, Cam. They went from yardage per game, yardage per play. They went from 100th 2 years ago to 27th in the nation.
Mm-hmm.
Sack rate on passing downs. They were the best in the country last year. That's Mullen developing Franks to get rid of the ball, make a decent decision, check down, do whatever he needs to do. Best in the nation from 98th before Mullen the year before. Converting and gaining yardage on first down just to get yourself ahead of the sticks in decent shape. 7th in the country offensively last year. Turnover margin, number 1 in the SEC, number 7 in the country. And their points per game went from 108 2 years ago to 22nd in the nation. Their defense didn't get better. It got worse. And that trend has been going on for about 4 or 5 years. It was just the offense was just not explosive, just much more efficient and protective of the football.
And that is the story. You know, I know that Miami obviously hopes for a similar kind of development from offense. And again, going from the hundreds, I said, to the 50s or 60s, if we can get to the 30s or 20s in these efficiency and explosive metrics that you're talking about, both standard, statistics and advanced metrics, that would be massive. And yeah, having a good offense does cover for having a poor defense or a defense that's not as dominant as previous, for Florida. So, yeah, I think that there are plays that are going to be there to be made for Miami's offense. I think there are going to be things available in the run game and in the pass game. But obviously, those guys have to go out there and play. They have to make the plays. And the offensive line has to block to give time. Those guys you have to see the hole. You have to hit the hole. You have to, not trip over the 35-yard line when you're sprinting in for a touchdown. You not have to, slip coming out of your break so the ball, hits you as you're falling down or off a hand and then gets tipped up for an interception. Like, there's all kinds of variables with that. But all of that being said, again, based upon the fact that Florida's defense is good but not great and and look, a top 25 defense is nothing to sneeze at, but that's not, a number 1 overall defense or anything. So again, I do think that there's going to be the ability and the opportunity to make some plays, but you have to go out there and make them. And that's the, uncertainty of life heading into a game.
253 on the line, which is an enormous response considering it's 1:00 in the afternoon and most people are at work. Usually, the numbers bear it out. Every time I strike up a live stream, I can do it at midnight and there's tons of people on the line, but during the day, crickets typically. But people are into this one. Definitely Florida and Miami coming up 7:30 Eastern time. Saturday night in Orlando. So the question here, as we flip to the offensive side for Miami, defense for Florida a little bit more, we talked development from Felipe Franks. I would love to see. So this is one of those theories that makes sense, but I would love to see any kind of metrics or statistics back it up. Like division games are always tougher in the NFL. Well, that's kind of I don't have any numbers to back that. I would love somebody to actually lay down the numbers that would back that up. Mm-hmm. Quarterbacks making their first start against a Power 5 opponent, against a quality opponent. Would love to see the numbers on that versus what they accomplished the rest of their careers after that and how difficult that assignment is, talking Jaron Williams.
And that is a very good point. I'm not going to dive too into it, but as I go through our editorial system on State of the U, I believe that I saw Marshall Thomas, yes, indeed. He's working on a piece of every quarterback's first start for the Miami Hurricanes ever since Ken Dorsey left. So that is a thing that we are evaluating and looking at. Yeah, how did all these guys do in their first games? And, I went out to a live show event for my buddy's podcast on Friday night, and they had the legend himself, Brad Kaya, in the building, and I talked to him a little bit about that, because his first start was 2015 on the road at Louisville in the season opener. And, I wrote about it beforehand saying, these are the things we needed to do. This is scheme-wise. This is just mentality-wise, not just being super conservative on offense and things like that. And that was Al Golden at the helm. So, yeah, it might not have been 15, 14. Anyway, whatever year it was. It was 15. It was 14 because 15 was the second year. That's when Gold got fired, and then he stayed for one more. Anyway, so it was 2014. So, yeah, I talked to Brad Kaya about it and everything. So that is, something that is interesting to know and note, just like you're talking about the quarterback play in different scenarios and situations. But obviously your first game is a game that matters because it usually sets the tone for what you're going to do in your career and everything. And yeah, Jaron Williams is going to be on a big stage against Florida's defense, Florida's team in general. Obviously, a rivalry because these are teams in the same state. I know that Florida wants to try to neg Miami and say, oh, we're not a rival with them. Like, they're not a rival for us. That's fine. We just beat you guys every single time that we play. Anyway, which is why you ducked. And also, it's been reported by Brett McMurphy and hinted at other places, that Miami and Florida have agreed to a home-and-home series in 2024 and 25, which should be announced officially tomorrow. So, I know that I've come on here. I've said it in many different places. I've written it, that Florida are scared. They went running from Miami because we beat them every single time except for when they had Tebow in my lifetime. In 2009, that was it. I think they've won twice in my lifetime against Miami. But yeah, so they decided, I guess, obviously to do this one-off, and then, it fit in their paradigm to stop being scared and stop running away from us and actually come through and agree to the home and home in some years coming up. So we will see about that. But yeah, a quarterback, it is the glamour position in football. Obviously, if you make plays, any position could be the glamour position. But if you list them from like most known, most visible, and I mean, even talking outside of the world of sports, if you just kind of talk to a random guy on the street, hey, Tom Brady, oh, he plays quarterback or something. That's the thing that you'll know. You know what I mean? It just kind of is this massive thing, and that's going to be Jaron Williams. He has that position, like the quarterback of the University of Miami. That's one of the glamour positions in this sport, obviously, at a glamour position overall. So yeah, we'll see what happens with him. And yeah, in the near future on stateoftheu.com, we'll be evaluating his potential performance based upon what we've seen from every other quarterback who started for the Hurricanes in their debut, since Ken Dorsey left.
And Cam, I didn't leave this particular statement on the screen as long as I have, just to irritate you. It's just I'm doing other things, but we will move it along from there. I just want to reset and remind everyone, Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Please dive into the video selections that we have, previewing everybody across the country, even to the extent, Cam, if you can believe it, I was asked to preview on SG1 Sports every opener in the Big Ten. So I even cut a video preview on UMass and Rutgers. That's how far we take the deep dive here.
Wow.
So, join us for all the videos, but a little bit more standard today and tomorrow with Miami and Florida, Auburn, Michigan, USC. We will be talking all sorts of week 1 action, but of course this is week 0 and what we really need to focus on right here. So we appreciate the response with 266 on the line in the middle of the day. Cam Underwood, State of the U. You need to join him and the rest of the staff over there talking Miami football. If I don't get to take your super chat contribution and post it on the screen, I will get to all of them in regards to naming them, because I've explained a few times, and I know you guys don't care about this, but I can only get to like the last 20 or 25 comments in the scroll to post them on the screen. I can see them all on my laptop here, but in regards to grabbing them and posting them on the screens, many of them become outdated and I can no longer retrieve them. But Power Hitter, we appreciate your contribution. And just noting, after Cam and I had dissected the Florida secondary matchup with Miami wide receivers, you just think that, hey, Florida is going to blitz the heck out of just the game plan, just to kind of cover up for some lacking depth in the secondary, not necessarily talent, but depth for Florida there. Some other Carl Roundtree, thank you so much for the contribution as well. No question attached, but we just appreciate you jumping on board and everyone else. The Miami running game. How do you think that will look different than what it did last year because of the Dan Enos effect and the minus Mark and John Richt impact on offense?
I think there's going to be movement, and that's just a thing that is it's a fact, like even if you go, 12, so one back, two tight, and you have two tight ends on this. Well, I got to invert it because of the screen. And then you take one over, so you have, just motion across. That kind of movement changes how the defense reacts. So there's going to be that, and there's going to be variety. You know what I mean? It's not going to be inside zone with a bubble backside tag, which was pretty much every play. You know what I mean? It's just it was to the point, like who was it? It was Barry Jackson from the Miami Herald wrote a piece talking about the modernization of Miami's offense and how the players who were playing in this offense are saying, it was disheartening to us because the other team we would break the huddle and they would say, oh, this is what's coming. Like, okay, it's going here, like with absolute certainty and clarity, with no deception or deviation from that plan. And yeah, obviously that's going to be problematic for your performance when the team knows what you're doing. I mean, again, think about back when you started playing NCAA football on your PS2 or PS3 and you put it on freshmen and the team would break the huddle and they would line up in a certain way. You knew, oh, they're going to do this play because they only run this play out of this formation. That's basically what Miami was doing. And that's not going to happen anymore. There's going to be variety to it. Obviously, you're still going to have some zone stuff. You're going to have some jet sweep action in there, where you can have, maybe a running back who's split out. You can have a wide receiver split out and get that jet motion really quick, get a handoff or a touch pass, either one, but they basically serve the same purpose, where you get a guy going fast towards the edge to try to get that. I'm sorry, I was just looking outside of my window. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be variety, and that's just a thing that has not been seen with the Miami Hurricanes offense in far too long. So in the run game, there's going to be diversity. I think that you might even see some stuff, just like I talked about earlier with Felipe Franks with design runs. You might even see a couple Jaron Williams design runs because the kid can move, and I know that obviously Tate Martell is a more athletic runner than anybody in Miami's quarterback room. N'Kosi Perry still had a couple 1,000 yards worth of runs in his high school offensive career. So did Jaron Williams. So I know that that's not necessarily his strongest suit, but it's a thing that he can do. So maybe you see some of that. But yeah, in the run game, there's just going to be diversity. You have DJ Dallas, you have Cam Harris, you have Robert Burns, you have Lorenzo Lingard. Like I said, you can get a jet sweep to Jeff Thomas, Mark Pope, KJ Osborne even. Hell, you can even get funky with it and give a jet sweep kind of quick trap motion to Brevin Jordan or Will Mallory at a tight end kind of a thing, which they do sometimes in high school. But hey, if it works, it works. So the options are there. And I think that we're going to try to find a way to utilize the talent in more than one way, more than just inside zone with a backside bubble screen tag. Like you're going to have those kind of things. So I think that's where the development's going to be. And obviously the performance is going to also hinge on calling the plays at the proper time against the proper defense. And regardless of when you call it, if they know what's coming or if it's not, and I'm talking about those 4th and 1 scenarios where, look, we're going to run the ball, stop it. Any situation, whether they know what's coming or not, offensive line has to execute. Everybody who's blocking has to execute. That's tight ends. That's a fullback if you have it. Those are wide receivers on the outside, making sure that the guy doesn't come crashing down. Or if he does, be sure that you're communicating right now so you can get a now ball, just a one-step throw from Jaron Williams out there. All of those things have to happen. But in general, there's just going to be diversity of scheme that we haven't seen in both the pass and the run games, but specifically in regards to the run game, since you asked me about that.
So I'd like to address 2 topics, one of those being on the screen from AVO Entertainment, who says the SEC is not as strong as they claim. What was the head-to-head last year? The head-to-head against whom, I don't know, but I'm guessing the other Power 5 conferences. So a great find for you, AVO Entertainment, would be to go to my channel go to the search bar and type in SEC conference ranking, rating, use those terms, SEC breakdown, conference rating, and ranking. At the conclusion of every season in the offseason, I break down the results of every Power 5 league. So it's easy for the general media to say, oh, the SEC went 5-3 against the ACC. There you go. And that's the end of the discussion. Well, that doesn't put it into context. That could be the best teams in the SEC playing the worst teams in the ACC. You got to put the games into context. You got to seed the teams, compare it, then put a metric on it that actually weights the when Ohio State beats Oregon State in game 1 of last season. Well, Oregon State's one of the worst teams in the country, and Ohio State's the best team in the Big Ten. Should that really credit the Big Ten much? No, it should be about that much. You got to put the games and the seedings into context and then look at a track record. And then when LSU goes out and beats Miami in one game, not say, well, the SEC is better than the ACC. That was one game. Again, the bulk of the games, all the games, put them into context and see the team. So we do that each and every offseason. So we put the SEC under the microscope along with every other Power 5 conference. Check out the video. Just search it in the search bar on my channel. Also, a number of people are commenting on the live chat in regards to Cam's perspective on Miami. Of course, he has a biased perspective. First of all, let's understand that everybody's biased. Everybody. I aim to provide neutral analysis and content here, but let's make no mistake about it. I got blood running through my veins. I'm biased too. Everybody's biased. I do my best to suppress that and give an objective view. Everybody's biased. So let's start with that. Cam is a Miami fan, writer, media analyst. Yes, he's biased. He does his best to step back, and he has, believe me, we've had him on here 100 times plus, been as critical of Miami football, whether that's administration, coaching staff, players, scheme, whatever it is, as anybody that you will find. So he does his best to be objective, but he's rooting. Yes. That's what college football and athletics and sports are all about. We're fans. We root. So there's going to be a slant of bias there, but also understand that if you want to do the deep dive here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, I've had the Florida contingent on, whether that's Jackie Franchuli from Rivals, David Waters from Gators Breakdown. We've looked at the recruiting. We've looked at the ahead of fall camp update. We've looked at the position previews on both sides of the football for Florida. So I have done my best to balance out the coverage with Florida and Miami and with everybody else in the country that really is relevant. Sure, I would love to cover Kansas State, but with the relevant programs that are contending for conference championships and that are popular for all of you. So let's understand what the framework of the discussion and the job that we do in, again, Cam's going to know 100% about Miami. He's going to have a certain level of knowledge on Florida football. We have prepared for this in looking at Florida football. There are like 60 college football games a week. I can't watch all of them. So do I see Florida play every week? No. Looking at last year, watched them come back against South Carolina. I saw the entirety against the Georgia game. I saw them play Michigan in the bowl game. I saw them play a number of games against Florida State and some other teams. I probably saw them play 6 or 7 times throughout the season. Mississippi State, they played LSU, really good game. Saw most of that game. So we've got a pretty substantial knowledge base on both sides of the coin here coming up on Saturday.
Right, and the thing about it is, yes, I view things from like the Miami perspective, but I'm not discounting other things. You know what I mean? I'm not just saying Jaron Williams is the best quarterback ever to walk the face of the earth. I don't care that he's only thrown 3 career passes. He's going to throw for 500 yards and 7 touchdowns and Like, I'm not doing any of that, you know, and just by being pragmatic and saying, hey, you know, this is a concern. Like, I know that Florida has, you know, this strength, but this is a concern for them. And Miami has this strength, and this is the concern for them. I don't think that that's ridiculous. So, you know, if you do think that that is ridiculous, I'm sorry that you feel that way. But trust and believe, I've been on here. I've been a fan on here a few couple times. Mark has gotten me riled up, and I just start going from just my mindset of things. You know what I mean? Kind of irrespective of anything else. Just no, it's Miami this or whatever. Like, I can be a fan, but I'm not doing that. I'm offering, you know, my view of the analysis of situations. And I mean, there's positives, negatives to everything. And if you don't think that, well, then I think that says more about you than me.
We have 300 folks on the line in the middle of the day. This just doesn't happen. So we appreciate the contribution. Please like the video, comment, share, get the video out there on social media, and bring your people in that you know out there on social media, family and friends, and social media acquaintances, because we do what we're doing right here every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So keep that in mind. Cam, it's one of my favorite questions of the offseason, leading into the season. I want to know, who don't you have a good read on your own roster that you're thinking this guy is going to play substantial minutes? Whether he's first hitting campus or maybe he's a junior that's been waiting in the wings and because of graduation needs to fill in those 1, 2, 3 guys that you're thinking, I'm going to be fascinated to see how he responds.
That is a good question. And if you hear that in the background, I'm sorry, the lawn guys decided that they wanted to show up right in the middle of recording. So this is going spectacularly. But
you've got the mic, it's unidirectional. We
exactly. So I'm trying to be very right on top of it and everything. So yeah, the couple guys on Miami's roster that I'm intrigued to see how they react to playing major minutes. First of all, you have to start with both offensive tackles, Xion Nelson and John Campbell. It was just announced that John Campbell is going to be your starting right tackle. He won that battle against Kylian Herbert. Those guys are, Xion Nelson's a true freshman and John Campbell's a redshirt freshman. So they don't have a long history or any history of performance at this level. And they're going up against one of the better defenses that they'll face. Very athletic edge rushers. That Zuniga guy, he's back. Yeah, exactly. So Jabari Zuniga, Jonathan Greenard, Jeremiah Moon, and then anybody else who comes in a blitz kind of situation for those guys. So both offensive tackles, I want to see how they perform to this level. On defense, I will say both safeties, Gervin Hall and Amari Carter. They have all the talent in the world. Gervin Hall looks like he's taking a step forward towards being a superstar in Miami's secondary. And Miami's had a recent history of some very good performance in this from the safety position, whether that be Jaquan Newton. Not Jaquan. He played basketball. Jaquan Johnson, Shudder Redwine, Deion Bush, Jamal Carter. I'm surely missing some other guys there at safety, but he looks like he's stepping up into that kind of a role where he's going to be one of the backbone guys. He's going to be one of the backbone guys in the secondary. And then Amari Carter, he's played all over the field. He's been a safety. He's been in the sub packages. He's blitzed a lot. He was even playing nose tackle, like a stand-up 2-point stance, zero tech nose tackle in some passing down situations. So they had 2 edge rushers. Then they had Amari Carter, a safety, playing nose, and he would either spy or blitz or whatever. So he's played all kinds of places on the defense, but him just being in base defense all the time, not having Jaquan Johnson or Sheldrick Redwine to rely on and say, okay, well, you weren't doing 100% what we needed to do, so we're going to go back to those seniors. Those guys are gone. So seeing how those 2 guys, Hall and Carter, in the safety positions, see how they really step up, that's going to be a big key. And then any of the freshmen who play, obviously, I just want to see how they do, whether that's a Jeremiah Payton on offense, whether that's a Jafari Harvey at defensive end, whether that's Takori Couch, Chris Williams at cornerback, or anybody else who would happen to rotate in, maybe even along the defensive line. Always I want to see what the freshmen do. But if I were to give you those names, I would say offensive tackles, Xion Nelson and John Campbell, and then safeties, Amari Carter and Gervin Hall.
Yes, Norman. Cam does know his stuff. The previous comment I put on the screen as well from Michael Love. This guy is a class act, this Michael Love. I've never talked to him directly. He's never called into the show. I don't know that we've traded any comments in the comments section of any of the videos, but he jumps on all these live streams and he is nothing but positive and supportive to say, hey, we appreciate what you do. Great job. You and Cam, love the insight, love the information. Please, people, like, comment, support, do all those good things. I love people that they don't need to agree. You don't need to agree with me. That's why I'm on here. We give analysis and debate. We welcome the debate and the discussion. So I don't want you to agree with me all the time, but if you enjoy what we do and you appreciate what we do in regards to opening up the forum for the college football analysis, discussion, and debate, please, we would ask that you respond by liking the videos and sharing the videos out on social media. So if this gets down to the final couple minutes of the game or a few seconds, Florida appears to be in good shape. Their kicker was just a true freshman last year. Evan McPherson hit 17 of 19, and their punters pretty darn good as well. Tommy Townsend, his brother Johnny, was a two-time NCAA punting champion, and he's following suit. 45 plus yards per punt, was one of the best in the nation. They're both number one on the first team all SEC. So they got the kicking down. They had all sorts of issues for a number of years trying to get a field goal under Muschamp and McElwain. On the Miami side, Cam, if it comes down to crunch time, trying to kick it through the uprights. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's where things are going to have to continue to develop. Bubba Baxa is the kicker. Both of our Bubbas have B last names, so it's like weird when I say it too quickly. But yeah, Bubba Baxa is the kicker from Pasadena, Texas. Miami actually recruited Evan McPherson a couple of years ago, and then stopped recruiting him because he was going to go to Alabama and then ended up at Florida. I know him. He was the number one rated kicker. He's very, very good. Bubba Baxa has that kind of talent, but he needs to develop his technique and accuracy. Miami really did not go to him for many long distance field goals. I think he only attempted one, maybe two from more than 40 yards, which means that you got to get inside the, 25-yard line, 23-yard line with the ball before you're at 40 yards for a kick. So you got to get really, really close and things like that. So maybe if he's developed over the course of time, then he can, we've seen him in practice or on air hit kicks from 55, 60 yards, but in games that hasn't borne itself out to be true. So hopefully at least we're getting that 45, 50 yard range where it's not crazy to run him out there. So he has the talent, but I'm not sure that he has the performance, especially from distance so far. Miami's punting situation was terrible. And so we brought in an Australian punter, Lewis Headley, who's one of the more interesting people in the world of college football. He's an Australian native. He's 26 years old. He owned a tattoo shop in Bali for a couple of years. That's why he's tatted literally everywhere or almost everywhere. I don't know, certain areas, but from his neck down, he's pretty covered in tattoos. He also did scaffolding in the Australian desert for a couple summers, which I'm sure was not a pleasant experience. But yeah, he, has like a 5-year-old kid, so he's an interesting guy, but he's the latest Aussie rules punter kind of to come over and ply his trade over here in the United States in the game of American football. So obviously lots of schools have had and do have Australian native punters. So yeah, maybe his age, so he has a little bit more experience and some life experience. So if there's like a fumbled snap or something, I've dealt with a wild snake that if it bit me, it could have killed me while I was doing scaffolding in 120-degree heat. What's a fumbled snap going to do? That kind of a thing. Hopefully it settles his nerves a little bit and gives him just that kind of maturity. And he has a strong leg. He has a great ability to kick the ball, and I hope that continues. I know that some people were saying that his average last year was the same that Miami's punter, Zach Fiegels had here, but that was his first year full-time kicking, and he's continued to kick and develop over the course of time. And even the shots from practice of Lewis Headley kicking, 50-yard punts and downing them at the 5 or at the 3, those things are encouraging. So just like Bubba Baxa, by hitting 55 or 60-yard kicks in practice, those are good, but I want to see it during the games. So I think that the ability for the punter position to be developed is key. And then obviously with kicking, I hope that it is key, or that there is development there as well. And yeah, Bubba Baxa, he was the kicker as a freshman. So he's been in these kind of games. Unfortunately, Miami was not in the position to kick for the win in any kind of, that Florida State game, that extra point mattered because, the last time in 2016 that the game was here, Miami had an extra point to tie the game and that got blocked. So, he went and hit that kick. So he's had some pressure kicks, but nothing like, a 52-yarder with 1 second left to try to win the game. So the talent is there. I don't know if the performance has been there. And we'll see, maybe that range starts to extend for backs, functional range in the games, not just in practice, because again, in high school, we saw him hit from 60 or 65 as well. And that was definitely not anywhere near where he was kicking from last year. So hopefully he and Lewis Headley take a big step forward.
Cam, speaking of being nervous during crunch time, I don't think I've ever asked you this question. What kind of fan are you? You get extra nervous, upset, uptight? Are you animated? Are you reserved? Are you
Am I animated?
To the game and your
Have you
response?
met me?
Well, animation, I don't need to ask about that.
Right.
But especially since you need to, you're unlike most of us. Well, I'll put myself in the same category.
Right.
You kind of have to answer the onslaught then.
Oh, boy.
When there's a negative game, then you have to answer for it on social media like it's your responsibility or something.
Look, if somebody runs for a loss of 2, I gotta
answer and being nervous for the games. Do you get nervous for the games?
There is that a little bit of adrenaline. I don't necessarily get nervous, but just over the course of time, I get quiet in those moments, and because me yelling more isn't going to do anything but hurt my voice, which incidentally I did in college, yelling at a game in the Orange Bowl in undergrad, and I almost lost my music scholarship because I screamed so loud I lost my voice for 4 days, and it was like a big concert week, which was kind of bad. But yeah, so I learned from that time, that lesson, sometimes I will yell a little bit. I take to clapping more, just because, I want to save this voice, obviously. And then, I get still and I get quiet. I try to live in the moment, and I try to see everything. You know what I mean? So if I'm there, I try to just see the whole field. If it's on TV, I just get quiet with it. And that's kind of just my way to settle into the moment and really, let that go. Obviously, I want to see things go in, Miami's favor. I want to see the performance and production get that kind of away. But, even last year, I wasn't there covering the Florida State game. I was there in the stands for the Florida State game. And then those 2 throws that N'Kosi Perry made back to back, the one up the seam to Jeff Thomas and the one up the other seam to Brevin Jordan to win the game. I was just very quiet, focused, and dialed in. Just want to see every part of that moment. And that's kind of the way that I get when things get close, when things get tight. Less demonstrative, more still, just to kind of understand that.
Cam, we do have a question on the line that I just threw on the screen from Anthony Manzano, who's a faithful viewer, commenting about the Bethel transfer out and how that's going to affect Christian Williams' role.
Christian Williams is going to be a boundary. Okay, so the question is, with Nigel Bethel transferring out and would a move for, I think that's would a move Christian Williams the slot, or is he more of a boundary corner? I would see Christian Williams more as a boundary corner just because he's a bigger dude. He's in that Mike Rump physical mold of, 6'1", 195 pounds, give or take. And the thing is, he's still just a little bit further behind because he was not an early enrollee and everything. So of the 5 scholarship cornerbacks right now, Christian Williams is number 5 on the depth chart. Trajan Bandy, Al Blades Jr., DJ Ivey, Corey Couch, and then Christian Williams. So I wouldn't switch him into being a slot guy. I don't think that he has those kind of movement skills. I would say a Bandy or a Corey Couch, because they're a little quicker in short areas and things like that. Because, think about who's going to run interior routes. You know what I mean? Like, think about all those infernal Julian Edelman, Danny Amendola kind of route. Braxton Berrios, when he was here, he was a master technician in the slot. I mean, you get option routes, you stutter, hey, I'm, head fake outside, I'm cutting across, either way, thing like that. You got to have somebody who's really elite in their short area kind of quickness to be able to kind of deal with that. That's why I would say a Bandy or a Couch there. But, hopefully all those guys develop, because, there's not going to be any red shirts for any of the cornerbacks. So that means Corey Couch at 150 pounds soaking wet, he's going to have to play. That means Christian Williams, he's going to have to get his technique together. He's going to have to play right now. And I'm not saying that he's a terrible player. He's not. I'm also not going to say that he's, first team all ACC player, because he's not. But wherever he is, steps need to be taken forward for he and, everybody else in that position, because, again, Miami only has 5 scholarship cornerbacks, so things have to move.
Fred Langston. Hey, Fred, how you doing? It's good to see you. Comments on the channel on a regular basis and is very, very supportive. We appreciate Fred, who's asking about an appearance that he heard with you with the Orange Bowl Boys podcast and your thoughts on the game. I don't know if you provide on State of the U a prediction at some point during the week. We don't want to give that away if it's exclusive there, but you can comment to where people can find your appearance on their podcast.
Yeah. So that was the event that I went to on Friday, the Orange Bowl Boys podcast. My boy Roman, I've known for a long time. It was his birthday. So we stayed out there, and then he passed the torch to me at midnight because that became my birthday on Saturday. Nice. Yeah. So he's one day in front of me. He's a couple years older than me, but still, you get what I'm saying. But anyway, he decided that like kind of halfway through the live show, he was like, yeah, I want to go have some food and have a drink and go sit with my beautiful wife over here. So anybody want to come and hop on the microphone and keep the thing going? And like everybody was kind of looking at me, and I was like, fine, I'll go up there and I'll talk anyway. So yeah, it was me and Toast and Rusty and Brad Kaya was up there at the same time. So that was fun. And so the question was, like, what do you think about this game? And I'm not going to give you the exact prediction, just because that is proprietary to State of the U. And I hope that you do check it out over at State of the U, because we will have predictions coming up later this week. But the conversation that I did have was, if Miami wins, it will either be, I don't think it's going to be close. I don't think that Miami has, and just like you're asking me about, like, if it comes down to the last second and a kick or something like that, I don't know that Miami has the wherewithal to do that. I do think that they have the wherewithal to win by 10 or more points, 2 touchdowns or more. I think that if things go and it is a Miami victory, I would more easily see that be by a larger margin than a smaller margin, if that makes sense. I think that Florida is more battle tested right now. I think that with their kicking game, they're more settled on special teams. So if it's a, 1, 2, 3 point kind of a game, I would see that right now probably going Florida's way. But if the lead gets stretched out, or if Miami were to win, I think that it would be one where things are going, it's a snowball effect and things go in a very right way for Miami, and they're able to stretch out the margin a little bit. So yeah, that's kind of just what I see with it, because again, like I hope that Miami wins, but I think that there are a lot of scenarios to see where Miami would lose. But again, yeah, if Miami were to win, I could see it be one where they were able to stretch out the margin just a little bit.
It's about 15 minutes left for you to ask your comments, make your questions known to Cam on Miami football as the Canes prepare for the Gators Wednesday night. I haven't let Cam know this, but we've got our regular 8 o'clock show lined up. I'm going to have David Waters from Gators Breakdown jump in for maybe 10 minutes, give a quick splash, and mix it up with Cam a little bit. So David has agreed to do that. But we're on the line for 50 minutes to an hour Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, each and every Wednesday night with Cam. And in Cam's absence, we scrape together some kind of show, but typically have Cam on the line to talk Miami football. All right. Anything else that hits you in regards to sizing this one up? I pretty much scanned the offense, the defense, and the special teams.
Yeah, I mean, I think the other part of things is going to be Dan Enos stepping into being a play caller again for the first time in a couple of years, because obviously being at Alabama, he was not. At least last year, he was going to be the offensive coordinator, and then he left to come to Miami, which is awesome. And this is Manny Diaz's maiden voyage as a head coach. He's never been a head coach at any level. So seeing how he handles things, and obviously there are veteran coaches on the staff. Dan Enos was previously a head coach. Todd Stroud was previously a head coach. So they have experience on the sideline and on the staff, and they'll be able to help out, in making some of those decisions. But obviously, Manny is a guy with a clear mind for the strategy and scheme and the way he wants to go about things. But, again, Mike Tyson, nice. Mike Tyson said that everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And we'll see what happens if and when that, occurs to Miami. There's going to be something that does not go Miami's way. How does Manny Diaz settle the team? How does he find a way to coach his way through that, react to the situation, and prepare or be prepared for the next scenario, the next situation? Manny, sometimes last year we were a little bit unsettled with the defense just because they gave up a little bit more in the first half. in the last couple of years than we would have liked. But, adjustments happened at halftime and they were able to right the ship. But, I want to see how prepared he is and, just able to adapt on the fly. Like, you're not going to always have a halftime to get something right. You got to get it right in between a couple of drives. So, I'm interested to see those things. So that's definitely going to be a big storyline. And then he's also going up against his former employer. Dan Mullen hired him twice. So there's something to be said for that. And it's Florida. So, who doesn't want to win? Duh.
Slim Shady Canes has jumped in with another contribution. Slim Shady, we appreciate the contribution. Just wants to make his prediction known at 21-17 Miami with a pick six included with a couple offensive touchdowns. Anthony back in with another comment or a question, I should say, for Cam involving this being a recruiting game that recruits would show up for. So I don't know if you have any knowledge, Cam, of who may be recruiting targets that will be at the game on the Miami side. And if not, just the overall impact as you see it in regards to what this game means for down the road recruiting efforts.
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that either school is going to host visits for this game. I don't know if they'll be able to, or if there's a NCAA waiver, because it's a neutral site game. It's not on anybody's campus. But it's in Orlando, and I know that there's going to be a bunch of people there, and if they're not there, then they'll be watching. So I do not have a list right now. I have not even looked for that, but it's gonna be key. Obviously this is a local team in the state. Whether you call it a rivalry or not, whether Florida wants to call it a rivalry or not, they are comparable level teams. Historic programs that compete for a lot of the same kind of recruits. So, it's going to matter how things do on the field for both teams, how things trend, and even in a loss, things can look positive for, wide receivers. So, maybe you're like, oh, if I play receiver, they're still, they're doing this, but they can get it together. Maybe for offensive line, hey, there's snaps to be had. Maybe on defense, I want to be the next defensive lineman to get up the field and sack the quarterback and things like that. And that can go for both sides. So, there's going to be a ton of eyes there. There's going to be plenty of recruits, I'm sure, who are making their way up there to Orlando. Both schools recruit the Orlando area heavily, so that's the thing. But if the recruits are not there and hosted by either school, they'll be watching, because everybody will be watching.
Folks, keep in mind that we'll be back on a Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time. So anything that we missed tonight, and I'm sure you'll have more comments and questions. I did kind of downgrade the Florida defense, and rightfully so. I think the metrics would back me up over the last 4 or 5 years that it's taken a bit of a tumble. But I will mention, as was mentioned in the live chat, Todd Grantham, very successful defensive coordinator. The Gators threw him an extra $300,000 to keep him around and keep him away from the Cincinnati Bengals. But Florida did lose its defensive line coach and quarterbacks coach. That would be Sal Sinceri, who made his way back to Alabama, where he played, and Charlton Warren going to Georgia. So they lose a couple positional coaches on that side of the football, but retain Todd Grantham. Williams playing under center versus the shotgun. Jamaica Kane is wondering what you think the approach will be there.
You'll see both, and you'll see plenty of both. We've talked about that before. That's one of the things that Dan Enos does definitely want to do on offense, is operate from under center, and then also from shotgun. And that's where, Tate Martell was saying, hey, when I came in, I was expecting, maybe I take a couple snaps under center, but then they shift and they let me do everything in shotgun, because that's what I've always done. That's where I'm comfortable. And again, being only 5'11" versus Jerry Williams, who's 6'2", and N'Kosi Perry, who's 6'4", that kind of distance matters for him. But I do think that we're going to see plenty of standard offense under center operation from Jaron Williams, but also we will see some shotgun. And I would expect to see some wrinkles on top of that as well. I would expect to see some wildcat. I would expect to see some exotic formation of some sort. I don't know exactly what that is. And if I did, I wouldn't tell you. So don't ask me. Just like Steve Kerr before the starting Andre Iguodala in the finals a few years ago, he was asked directly about that. He said, no, we're not going to change anything. And then he changed it because, why would I tell you and then, give away the game plan. But I'm not even saying that I do know the game plan, but if I did, I would lie to you and I would tell you that I don't. But I'm being honest with you and tell you that I do not. But I could fully see some exotic kind of formation happening and things like that. But yeah, I fully expect to see Jaron Williams operate under center because he did it in high school. He's done it here in Miami and also from the shotgun because he's done that as well. So yeah, I think that the formation or the positioning of the quarterback being multiple is part of the offense and part of the scheme where you do things in a different kind of a way depending on the down and distance and situation and what you want to do on offense. So yeah, both under center and shotgun, I fully expect to see that.
So regardless of what kind of college football fan that you are, I believe this is the place to be to get you set for 2019. So some of you just love Miami football. And if you don't know that we're here each and every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern time with Cam Underwood from State of the U, then you need to know that and lock it in every Wednesday night. And of course, if you can't make it for the live streams, sure, that's the best way to take in the content because you can join and engage with everybody else in the live chat. But if not, of course, it posts very quickly right after that, as this will. So if you've missed the last 90 minutes or any portion thereof, you just wait for this video to post, as it will in the next few minutes, and you can check out any portion that you missed. But if you love the ACC, whether you love the SEC, whatever your college football appetite is, lock it in here. Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. We appreciate you guys have made us explode in the last several months. So we appreciate your contribution to what we do here. And of course, if you really want to get set for this one in particular, you check out all the videos that we've supplied you over the last several months from the Florida and the Miami perspective, position breakdowns across the board and analysis, but also, of course, State of the U. What would people find if they jumped right over as soon as they get done listening to us, Cam?
They'll find a lot of great content. We've been working like there's no off season through the entire off season. I know that some sites ease up on their content, but we try to bring you the best and the most all the time. So not just, giving you quantity, but giving you quality in that quantity. So we have a story stream up for Florida this week, obviously for the season opener, because that's huge. We have player profiles, position previews, game previews throughout the entire summer. And so much more. So yeah, just go on over. I did 5 big questions for Miami's 2019 season. Answered those today. We evaluated both running games already, the star versus the striker. Looking at the troubling launch of the ACC network because it's not being picked up by linear cable providers, which leaves me in an interesting situation because I need to figure out how to get the ACC network before week 2 when Miami plays against North Carolina on that network, which is not currently provided by AT&T UVerse. So if anybody who works at UVerse is listening, hurry it up. We have our 100 greatest plays countdown. We have a preliminary news hit on Miami and Florida agreeing to that forthcoming home and home series. We have roundtable discussion with all kinds of questions about the 2019 season answered by all of your State of the U crew and much, much more. There's so much goodness here, like honestly and truly. I don't just say that because I, help run the site. But it is really a treasure trove of content for any Miami Hurricanes fan out there. So please go over to stateoftheu.com. We're on facebook.com/thestateoftheu, instagram.com/thestateoftheu. On Twitter, the website's account is The State of the U. That's managed by myself and Deputy Managing Editor Marshall Thomas. And then my personal Twitter is @Underwood Sports. All these great places, but especially if you go nowhere else, if you do nothing else, stateoftheu.com, go over, click over, come fan with us.
So this would be the latest purchase for Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, specifically for this game. Not that it's going to get thrown out the window after the game, but so this was not cheap. So this is one of the reasons why we would like you to supply us with some contributions in the super chat, because many of you have caught the vision and understand what I'm trying to build out here. So I'm taking the trip down to Orlando. Hope to make a big splash, want to cover the game, not going actually to the game, but going to check out the tailgating. And so I will be circulating between sports bars and tailgating and so forth to try to catch as much coverage as possible, my reporting on the game, my analysis. But of course, I want to talk to all of you, so I will be around. So look out for me, and you may get yourself on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. So it should be a whole lot of fun. I'm headed down Friday night.
Nice.
And I'm just going to be wandering around. I don't know where I'm going. So it'll be an adventure as well. All right, Cam, we appreciate you making time for this special edition here. We had over 300 on the line at one point, so
Yep.
I know that last week's Wednesday night show has topped out well over 6,000 views, so people are responding.
Well, that makes me happy. The work that we're doing, paying off, and everything, and the content we're providing is appreciated by the fans. So thank you for everybody watching and listening, and we'll catch you next time.
All right, Cam, thank you so much. Everybody else, this is the last live stream of the day, but I'm gathering up video on Auburn, Michigan, and USC in particular, Alabama, coming up in the next day or so. So we will see all of you very soon. And of course, Wednesday night, right back here, bring your comments and questions for Cam on Miami versus Florida.